The dynamic duo Dinamico is back.
Hello and welcome back after the summer. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And yes, we've been away, but you've been listening to us, I hope, during the summer, listening to episodes we pre-recorded, but we're back live in the studio or my flat, and we're going to help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you doing, Reza?
I'm doing very well, except you may notice I have a little touch of hay fever. That's allergia, pollen, a little bit. So excuse me, I'm trying not to sniffle too much. That's my excuse.
There's a good verb, to sniff.
Yeah.
Yep, don't do that. Don't sniff into the microphone. How was your summer?
Brilliant summer. I've been away from Spain. I've been in Ireland most of the time teaching. So I haven't been resting. No. There's no rest for the wicked, we say in English. No rest for the wicked. And if you're a bad person, you don't get any rest. That's me. I'm very bad, so no rest.
So you were working during the summer, but you were working abroad. Did you enjoy it, or was it not very enjoyable because you were working?
Oh, it was very enjoyable because it was quite different to the work I do most of the time in Spain. This work in Ireland was at a university, so a different type of student. So it was academic English, which we've talked about before in the podcast. Things like how to do a research essay, how to give presentations, academic language. So a bit of a change, you know, not things like how to go into a shop and order a pizza, not that at all, but kind of studious academic things. And most of my students, like most students in the UK in such courses, are from the Far East, particularly China and Japan. So a much different student to my typical Spanish student.
And I would imagine with different problems as well in pronunciation, the problems they have pronouncing if they're Chinese will be different to Spanish speakers, right?
Yes, very, very different pronunciation problems and grammar as well. I don't know much about Chinese language, but I think things like they don't really have verb tenses. Mm-hmm. You indicate by saying, yesterday I go instead of yesterday I went. So verb tenses. A problem which Spanish speakers also have, everybody has really, the word the. Ooh, that word the.
The article.
That one word, the definite article, is a nightmare for Chinese students. And it's not easy for Spanish speakers either, as you know.
Yeah, of course, we have spoken about the articles. So if you're having problems with and the, you can go back to listen to episode 41 that we did with our friend Bea and learn all about the article in English.
So Craig, what about you? I've been in Ireland where it was cooler than Spain, although quite warm by Irish standards, but cooler than Spain. Where have you been? Have you been anywhere cool?
I have been somewhere cool in both senses of the word cool. Very cool to go. I went to Philadelphia in July for a podcasting conference. That was just for a few days, but I did get the chance to visit a good friend there. My friends Vicky and Jay, who actually have a very good English teaching YouTube channel. And I'll link to simple English videos in the show notes if you're interested. But we recorded some videos in her wonderful studio, her recording studio in her flat in Philadelphia.
Ooh, I'm jealous. She has a recording studio.
With a green screen, lots of cameras, really professional. It was fantastic. Wonderful experience. And then I had the podcasting conference for 4 days and I saw absolutely nothing of Philadelphia because I went straight from her flat to the conference. The conference was very, very busy. We say in English, very full on, which means I was occupied every minute. But it was wonderful, very, very enjoyable. I met some wonderful people and I made some interesting contacts for improving the audio.
Apart from working in the world of podcasting, have you been doing any other type of work?
I've been editing some audio for other people, other podcasters. So there are some podcasters, especially in America, who they just want to get on the microphone and speak. And they don't really want to edit the audio after and improve the sound. So I've been doing some paid work editing the podcasts of other people. And that's one reason I went to Philadelphia and I met some interesting people who hopefully will give me some work in the future.
Okay, listeners, you see, we have been busy.
So let's go to our first piece of listener feedback, and it's from Alfonso from Cordoba, who is a new listener to the podcast. So welcome, Alfonso, and all the other new listeners who are joining us this week.
Hi, Craig. Yesterday, it was the first time I listened to your podcast in the car because I have a trip for more than an hour to go to my work and to go back to my work. So 2 hours. So I listened it and air a podcast, and I wanted to know if it's possible to have the first. I wanted to begin from the beginning. So if it's possible, just say to me how to get the podcast number 1 and so on. I give you thanks for that. Thank you very much. My name is Alfonso Blanco and I'm calling from Cordoba, Spain. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for your voice message, Alfonso. Reza, any comments about what Alfonso said?
My first comment is that it was a very good message and very clear, Alfonso. Thank you very much. We hope to get more messages from you in the future. We hope you keep on listening. But there's one little thing I think you can improve. You said listen, Ed, at the end. It's not listen, Ed. The E in ED is silent. Listened. But occasionally we do pronounce the E in the ED. For example, needed. But I tell you what, Alfonso, the best way to find out more about that is to go back to the lesson where we talked about that. So if you go to inglespodcast.com/60, in that lesson we talked all about the pronunciation of ED.
Okay. And I also like the idea that you're listening in the car, Alfonso, because you're multitasking. You're using the dead time while you're driving to make good use of that time and listen to podcasts and improve your English. And you're commuting. That's the word for someone who travels from outside the city into the city to work, for example. The verb is to commute. So you're commuting every day. You're driving in your car, and then you're commuting back home in the evening. So as a commuter, it's a really good idea to listen to the podcast while you're driving on the train, on the bus, etc.
And Craig, he asked how he could listen to all the old episodes. What options has he got?
Well, he has several options. Possibly the easiest is to go directly to our website, which is inglespodcast.com, and there you will find all of the episodes we have recorded going back, way back to 2014, and you can listen directly on the website. Just click the button, click the audio player, or you could download the MP3 file to a small audio device and take it with you. Or if you have an Android phone, you can listen on Google Podcasts. So download the Google Podcasts app and listen on that. If you have an iPhone, it's very easy because the podcast app is native, which means it's automatically on the phone when you buy it now. So there's a podcast app automatically on the iPhone and the iPad. And we're also on Spotify. So if you go on Spotify, you can also find our back catalogue, all our old episodes. So many different ways to listen. If you are having problems, Alfonso, or anybody, just send me an email to craig@inglespodcast.com and I will help you to find other episodes.
Of course, you could subscribe free on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. Subscribe doesn't cost any money, and that means automatically every week when we release a new podcast, you'll get it on your smartphone.
Thank you for your message, Alfonso. Next, we have a message from Javier from Madrid.
Hello, Les and Craig. I am Javier from Madrid, and I like to say that I love your podcast. I learn a lot of things, not only English, and I really enjoy it. I want to tell you about the story that maybe you know about Heinrich Schliemann, the discoverer of the ruins of Troy. He was a very interesting person who spoke a lot of languages. and he created a strange method to learn languages. At the beginning, he memorized a large text, and he didn't mind the meaning of the text. He only memorized it. When he met with a native person, he speak the text very loudly and asked for the people, for the native, to correct him. And after that, he memorized again the text. And when he get a perfect pronunciation, he try to understand the text. And after that, he gets the language. I think he get to speak maybe 15 languages or something like that. I am trying to do the same, but I want to memorize some short sketches from television. For example, if you remember the serial Cámara Café from Spain, there was a very little sketch. I would like to try to do the same, but do you know another serial in English similar to that? Thank you very much, and sorry for my poor pronunciation. I try to improve it, but it's difficult for me. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much, Javier, for your message. Heinrich Schliemann? I've never heard of him. Have you?
Yes, I have heard of him, yeah. I didn't know that he was a famous polyglot. That's someone who speaks lots of languages. But I did know that he discovered a lot of interesting historical sites and artifacts. I have his name in my mind very much connected with ancient Egypt and Greece and that type of thing.
Okay, so he was a bit like an archaeologist explorer like Harrison Ford.
Yeah, an Indiana Jones type
Indiana
character.
Jones type character.
Really, he was.
And spoke at least 14 languages, apparently. But do you think he spoke so many languages because of his method of repeating text and getting correction on the text and repeating it again, as Javier said? Or was he just very clever?
Who knows for sure, but I suspect that he was just very clever.
I think so, yeah.
Because that method is not going to make you really proficient in a language. It's going to help, yeah, but there are other things you have to do, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. Anything that you like doing based around English has got to be good for your English. So, Javier, if you're into this, which means if you like doing it, then why not? I did Google Cámara Café, which is a Spanish TV series that I think no longer exists. And the only thing I can think of that's similar, People Like Us, is a similar sitcom, and you can find the texts from that to repeat. You use texts in your class sometimes, and the students read aloud. Could you speak a bit about that and how you use it?
There's a bit of debate. There's disagreement in the world of teaching English or any language, I suppose, any foreign language, about whether you should do that or not. Quite a few teachers that I know never do that. They say it's not really much use to have students read aloud.
I don't normally do it, no.
I disagree. I think there is some use in it. It's not something I do in every class. Certainly not. I think that would be unnecessary and it would slow the class dynamic down too much and would be a bit boring. But in some classes, I get students to read out bits. It doesn't have to be every student. Just every week, let's say 2 or 3 students can read a little bit of a text.
And do you correct their pronunciation as they're reading after they've read?
Either I correct or I ask their fellow students, their classmates, to listen. And at the end, I ask them if they heard anything which could be improved.
So focusing specifically on Javier's message, Javier, there are 1 or 2 small things you could improve. Starting with the beginning, you said, I am Javier, although it's more normal in English when you're introducing yourself to say, this is Javier, or it's Javier. Just simply, it's Javier, or this is Javier, and not I am, which is a direct translation from soy Javier. Reza, did you notice anything about his message?
Yes, although, Javier, we could more or less understand everything you said, there were definitely some instances where you mixed up the present and the past tenses. I think there were a few cases where you definitely should have used a past tense, past simple, but you used the present tense. Or perhaps even you've mixed up the past simple and the present perfect. Can you think of any examples that we heard, Craig?
Yes, Javier, you said I learn, but you were speaking about the past, so it should have been I have learned a lot. If you're speaking about your life and the things that have happened in your life in the past and up to now, then use the present perfect. So I have learned a lot from this man, for example. Also with the verb create, you said he creates. Well, of course, he lived at the end of the 19th century. I think he died in 1890, Schliemann. So he created. And there, Alfonso, is an example of the T ending on the verb create, which means you do pronounce the ED ending, created. Can you think of any more, Reza?
Yes, in fact, this is a mixture of getting the wrong tense and getting the wrong vocabulary. You said he remind. Remind is not the word. You mean remember, because to remind means to make another person remember. But you meant to say that Schliemann, he himself remembered. So not remind, remember, and it should be past tense, remembered.
How would you say the difference in Spanish? Is there a difference between remind and remembered? Remind me to buy milk. I remembered to buy milk.
So remember is acordarse. It's reflexive. So I remembered, me acordé. But to remind another person is recordar without reflexive. For example, I remind you, te recuerdo. I remind you that you have to do something.
So in English, when you remind someone, you must have that pronoun or that object pronoun after remind. So remind me to do something. He reminded me to turn off the electricity, for example. Two other things to focus on, Javier. Speak, the past is spoke. So he spoke the text. And you also said when he gets a perfect pronunciation. I would use the verb there. So when he perfected his pronunciation. When he perfected his pronunciation. And finally, the past of get is got. So he get to speak should be he got to speak. So be careful, Javier, of those past simple tenses and when to use the present perfect.
And there was one other piece of vocabulary I noticed. You said something which made sense. It wasn't wrong, but I think your meaning was not what you intended. You said that Schliemann spoke very loudly. You can say that grammatically, you can do that, but I don't think that's what you mean. To speak very loudly means to increase the volume, to speak
Más fuerte.
at a high volume, más fuerte, yeah. But I think what you meant to say was he spoke aloud, which is one word, A-L-O-U-D,
En
which
voz
is
alta.
an adverb, yeah? So in other words, he didn't just read in his thoughts to himself. He actually produced a physical sound coming out of his mouth when he read. He read aloud.
And if you're interested in knowing more about Heinrich Schliemann, here's something he said, and I'm quoting here. Necessity taught me a method which greatly facilitates the study of language. This method consists of reading a great deal aloud. There's that word again, aloud, without translating, having a lesson every day, constantly writing essays about subjects of interest, correcting these under the supervision of a teacher, learning them by heart, de memoria, by heart, and repeating in the next lesson what was corrected on the previous day. So that's the method of Heinrich Schliemann.
Which has a lot of good advice there. However, I'm not sure many teachers these days would agree with his idea that you need to learn things by heart. That's a bit old-fashioned by modern pedagogical standards, wouldn't you say, Craig?
Yeah, obviously you need to remember stuff, like you need to remember the past of get is got, etc. You need to learn your verbs by heart. But when you start learning too much of a construction by heart, then you're into tricky or difficult areas.
Yeah, learn important grammar points or expressions by heart. But he's suggesting that you correct your essays and learn an entire essay by heart. There's not much benefit from doing that, really. The
Yeah.
important thing is that you understand your mistakes, but you don't have to learn the corrections by heart. You got me interested in this, Javier. So I looked for some other quotes about reading aloud in voz alta. And I found one from an author I really like called Neil Gaiman, a British author. And he wrote about this. He wasn't thinking about learning foreign languages. He was thinking more about teaching children, but it's related. And he wrote this: "We have an obligation to read aloud to our children, to read them things they enjoy, to read to them stories we are already tired of, to do the voices, to make it interesting, and not to stop reading to them just because they learn to read to themselves." So that's a slightly different perspective. But what he's saying is reading aloud is very important, and adults should do it to children, make them listen. We read aloud, and that will help their learning. I suppose you could see the same for language teachers reading to the students aloud. What do you think, Craig?
Absolutely. And if you do have children yourself, why not read aloud in English to your children? Because you'll be improving your pronunciation, you'll be improving your English by reading, and your children will be hearing English, and they'll be improving their English too. And why not read them some Neil Gaiman books if they're old enough? Why not read to your children in English?
And as he says, do the voices.
Yeah.
So if it's
Mickey Mouse.
if it's Mickey Mouse, well, I wouldn't try to copy Mickey. Mickey for me is unique. But imagine he's a horrible old man. So I am a horrible old man. This is my horrible old man voice. Not very convincing, but at least I tried. Yeah. Or
Pakistani accent.
Oh yes, Pakistani is quite easy. No problem with the Pakistani. Do the voices, and it brings the story to life, right?
And the children love it. Next, we have a voice message from Alberto, who's listening to English at conferences.
Hi Craig, hi Reza. Here is Alberto speaking. Last week I went to listen to a conference by Mr. Paul Daugherty. He is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer in Accenture. The conference was in English, of course. And I am quite disappointed because even if I was able to understand for the first 5 minutes, after the first 5 minutes, it became more and more difficult for me, even if I concentrated a lot. But I think I was able to understand 60%. And I will appreciate your opinion about this. Maybe I need more exercise, more listening, more speaking. What do you think about this? Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Alberto, for your message, which was very, very understandable and very clear. I think you have very good English. Is there any comments?
Yes, very good pronunciation. Although I understand your problem, it's not easy to listen to particularly long extracts of foreign language. So in conferences, people can speak for a long time. It's hard to maintain your concentration, isn't it?
Yeah, it is difficult when it's not in your language. And one thing that occurred to me that maybe, was it Paul Doherty? I'm sorry, I haven't heard of him. Maybe he was very aware and conscious for the first 5 minutes that there were non-native speakers in the audience. And then he forgot after 5 minutes and started speaking as he normally speaks. And maybe that's where he lost you. But how can you improve on that? Well, I'm not sure if you're going to like this answer, but it's really just listen more. I think the more you listen at your level of English, which seems to be fairly high, you just need to practice. Alberto, you just need to practice more. So one thing you could do is listen to TED Talks, which are very similar to conferences because they are people giving presentations in English. And of course, every presentation, every speaker has a slightly different accent, a slightly different rhythm and delivery and speed when they're giving their presentation. So listening to many TED Talks will, I think, definitely help your listening comprehension. And I have a feeling they would be more or less at your level. Remember, you can watch the presentations on the TED Talks YouTube channel, but why not listen to the podcast? Because you can do that in your car or when you're at the gym or doing something else, and you can listen and do something at the same time. There are also TED podcasts.
And the great thing about TED Talks is there's a huge variety, Alberto, so you can listen to specifically the subject or subjects which interest you. Mm-hmm. You don't have to listen to things which aren't of interest to you. You can listen only to things which genuinely interest you.
And also vary your listening sources. This is just for general listening comprehension to widen your comprehension. So listen to news in English, listen to different podcasts, maybe comedy programs, TV series, sports programs or podcasts, fiction, stories. Try to vary your listening sources, fuentes, as much as possible to give you a wide variety of different accents and themes.
Another thing you could do is to learn to take notes. I say learn to take notes because not everybody's very good at taking notes at the beginning. The key to taking successful notes is not to write too much. Mm-hmm. Only write what you really need to write.
Keywords.
You can write symbols, pictures, if that's quicker than writing the word. For example, imagine you want to say the price went up 50%. Well, just write a $sign, like an S with a line through it, $sign, and an arrow going up and 50%. And you've got all the information there. You'll find once you get good at it that you'll see patterns emerging, and you'll end up even predicting what you think the speaker is going to say based on the notes you have so far. Imagine a speaker saying, well, there are several advantages to studying abroad, for example. Firstly, blah, 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 blah. Well, then your mind, because you're taking notes, you write one, firstly, blah, blah. You know that the next thing they're going to say is the second advantage. Secondly, blah, 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 it's going to be so if you listen carefully and take notes and it's written there, you'll find that you can kind of predict what they're probably going to say next, and that will help you as well.
Yeah, that's good advice. So we hope that's been helpful, Alberto. These are the three main things we suggest. Listen to TED Talks, vary your listening sources, and learn to take notes while you're listening. Next, we have a voice message from Santiago from Mexico, who also, if you remember, sent us a message last week. Let's see what Santiago says this week.
Hello, Craig. It's me, Santiago from Mexico again. And yes, you have already answered to my last voice message. I also want you to know that this is my really voice, my really speak. As you can hear, it is slower than the other one, than the last voice message. That's because I have written all what I want to say to you, and it's difficult to speak in English because I have to think first in Spanish to then say it in English. So I have listened to your last podcast that it was about probabilities in the past. And for example, in Spanish, we will say, tú debiste haber estado jugando. You can say that in English as you might have been playing, and it is understandable for me.
Hello again, Santiago. Thanks for your voice message. Always a pleasure to hear from you. Reza, any comments?
Yes, that was a very good message, Santiago. Thank you. But I'd like to point out a couple of tiny little things which you could correct. You said you have already answered to my last voice message. No to. You have already answered my last voice message without to.
Yeah, of course, because in Spanish you'd say contestado a. So there's no preposition in English. You answer something. Also, Santiago, you said, this is my really voice. I would say this is my actual voice. This is my actual voice. And I think you said that because the first message you sent, I think you wrote it first on paper and then you read it and recorded it, which is fine. That's great. I mean, why not? You're practicing your writing, you're practicing your speaking and your pronunciation. To be honest, we're happy to receive any voice message you send us. So however you want to do it is fine. Although you could perhaps try a different method just to practice something new, Santiago. You could record your message without writing it. Maybe just write some words, some bullet points, just some very, very short notes, and then try to improve your fluency. Because if you finish and you listen back and you're not happy with it, well, hey, just record again and then listen. Try to improve on the previous recording and then listen again and record again. And each time, try to iterate, try to improve on the previous recording. And when you're more or less happy, send it. And that way you're working more on your fluency than if you just wrote it and recorded it. Just an idea for next time.
And thank you very much for your positive feedback about the episode we did on modal verbs in the past. That was episode 219. So if anyone else is interested in finding out about modal verbs in the past, things like could have, done, should have eaten, might have listened, etc., you can go to inglespodcast.com/219.
And what we found interesting was that I think in Mexico and perhaps I'm guessing in other Latin American countries, you would say you should have been playing and translate it as tú debiste haber estado jugando, I think you said. How would we say that here in Spain if we were speaking Spanish?
Well, I think Spanish speakers would say tenías que haber estado jugando.
Yeah, interesting. Tú debiste haber estado jugando. That's difficult for me, that construction. You should have been playing. No, you must have been playing. You must have been playing. But interesting.
Yeah, just as there are varieties in Spanish between different countries, as you know from some of our episodes, there are varieties in English between different countries as well.
And finally, this week, we have a voice message from Armando from the Dominican Republic. I don't remember the last time we had a message from the Dominican Republic.
No, we've definitely had one before.
It's been a while.
Yeah, but it's been a little while. Yeah.
It's been a little while. So here's Armando.
Hi guys, my name is Armando. I'm from the Dominican Republic. I really enjoy listening to your podcast every day. I have a question for you. How I have to use either and neither? It's a little bit complicated for me to understand them, and I want you to explain me. I will be waiting for your answer. Bye.
Well, thank you, Armando. Obviously, you have a question for us, but we have a question for you. What was that noise at the beginning of your recording? Were you shaving? Was that an electric razor at the beginning?
I thought it might have been a chainsaw, una sierra mecánica de cadena. I hope you haven't injured yourself.
Were you cutting off somebody's head with a chainsaw and recording your English message, Armando?
It's a very straight sound at the beginning of that. Or it's probably just a phone, I guess. Yeah.
So your question, the difference between either and neither. We have spoken about the difference between either and neither in detail, and that was back in episode 56. So all you have to do, Armando, is to go to inglespodcast.com/56. That was back in June 2015. Wow. But the use of either and neither has not changed since then. So go and listen to that, Armando, and I think you'll have your question answered. Any comments on Armando's message, how he can improve his English?
Your pronunciation was very good and we understood everything, so no big mistakes. But a couple of little mistakes, a couple of classic mistakes that many people make. You said, how I have to use. You've forgotten that it's a question. So in the present simple, with most verbs, we have to add auxiliary do. How do I have to use? Although even that doesn't sound great, how do I have to use? Yeah, but sounds even better if you say, how should I use? Because have to is like it's an obligation, whereas should is more suggestion about the right way to do something. So, how should I use?
Another thing you said, Armando, was I want you to explain me. Well, it's not actually you that you need explaining. It's not you. You want something explained to you. So the correct sentence would be, I want you to explain it to me. Or I want you to explain either and neither to me. So it's explain plus object and then the to me. Explain it to me. Could you please explain it to me? And thanks for your message, Armando, all the way from the Dominican Republic. And now it's your turn to practice your English. Please send us some more questions or suggestions of topics to speak about in future podcasts. You can contact us by voice message. Go to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Or send us an email with a comment or question to me, Craig, at inglespodcast.com.
Or me at belfastreza@gmail.com.
And our list of Patreon supporters was getting so long, as I said last week, that we won't be listing everyone's name on the podcast. Only new supporters who joined us each week, and nobody joined this week. So we do list your names every episode in the show notes on the website at inglespodcast.com. And Reza, we have some wonderful news. Would you like to share our wonderful news with the audience?
Yes, talking about our Patreon supporters, our sponsors, in August, we passed our target, our objective. We got $102.80. So now we can guarantee to produce transcripts every week.
Yeah, that was our target when we launched the Patreon program over 2 years ago, and I'm really, really happy to say we have now passed it. So thank you to all of our wonderful Patreon sponsors. And thank you also to Bruno, our gold sponsor on Patreon, who very generously supports us. And we would like to mention his website, which is CopenhagenWalkingTour.com. What is that, Reza?
Well, it's a company that organizes tours. They could be of castles or walking tours through streets. For example, in Copenhagen. That's why it's called CopenhagenWalkingTour.com. And they do it in English or in Spanish. So if you're a bit worried that your English isn't quite good enough.
Well, it should be, listening to us.
Should be, yeah. But if you insist, Bruno will do it in Spanish. But it's not only in Copenhagen where you can go on a walking tour organized by Bruno's company. Where else can you go, Craig?
You can also go to Rio de Janeiro, to the favela area, and do a walking tour in Rio, which Bruno organizes, led by local guides. It's safe. It helps the community to improve the conditions in the favela. And if you want more information, go to Bruno's website, favelawalkingtour.com.br. And if you would like to join our wonderful group of Patreon supporters, I like to think of them as executive producers, helping us produce the show notes and the show. For a minimum of $1 per month, you can join that and get instant access to recent transcriptions that have been lovingly transcribed by Angelica Bello from Madrid. Go to patreon.com/Inglespodcast to join the group.
Angelica is very, very, very particular. She's got a good eye. And
a good pair of ears.
And a good pair of ears as well. And she helps us to improve our Spanish. She noticed a little mistake in episode 221, Craig, didn't she?
Yeah, usually my mistakes, actually. I said La Alma, which is wrong. Of course, it should be El Alma. And I was confused because, of course, it's feminine, but because of the A, I just assumed I would say La, because it ends with A. So it's like agua. Agua is
El agua.
El agua, even though it's feminine, because you need the L for pronunciation purposes, because la agua doesn't sound good. That's it. Thank you very much. on next week's episode, well, what we're going to speak about next week, Reza?
The lovely topic of diseases and illnesses.
Oh, I can't wait for that. That's a request from Gustavo Gonzalo. So please join us next week for some diseases and illnesses. Well, why not? I mean, why would you possibly not join us and hear us speaking about things so wonderful as diseases and illnesses? Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much to Reza for coming back. It's great to have the band back together. And if you haven't seen the Blues Brothers, you need to go and watch it in English. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later. The dynamic... You start. It's been a while. I'm a bit rusty. Not sure what to say. Go on. Reza, any comments about...
No. I am a horror old man. This is my horror old man voice.